All
Hey
right.
everybody, Justin from the Camera Shop of Muskegon. I'm here with Mr. Mike Amico from Olympus. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, good, Justin. Hey, everybody. Doing really good. So, yeah,
I don't even recognize you. Are you sure you're Michael Amico?
yeah. I got in a little fight with my razor today. It happens. The
Uh,
COVID beard is gone. The beard in general is gone. But no, yeah, it'll grow back in about a day. No, 2 weeks. I'll
in
have
a day.
something back.
If it grows back in a
uh,
day, then you got a lot of man going on. If you're if you can grow back in a day.
yeah, yeah. There's
Uh,
definitely some issues. Hey, guys.
hey,
Hey,
look at
Mike.
this.
Hey,
We've
Trish.
got Trish from Wales, UK. Oh
Nice.
man, that's really cool. I
Yeah, I got in a fight with my razor, Mike. So we were just talking about that. I sort of slipped today and I took it off. So it'll come back.
oh,
Like a
I'm
baby's behind.
very soft, very smooth.
So today we're going to talk about landscape.
Yeah, so this week,
Yeah.
Mike took a respite last week. He's technically on vacation, so I want to thank you, Mike, for taking the time
Sure.
out of your evening. I know you got your girls down there in Florida,
Yeah.
and just want to thank you for taking some time this evening to talk to all of our customers.
Uh, yeah, I figure we talk about landscape a little bit. I have a presentation I can go through, kind of like what we did last time. Hopefully, it's not too boring, and it's just basically a lot of the basics and some tips and tricks that I like to throw into, as well as just general stuff. And landscape's interesting because I consider my stuff still learning, just like birding. We're always growing and learning, so you know, throw
Well,
out some of those tips.
and if you're not, then then you're not doing life right if you're not learning
Yeah,
something. So
yeah, you're always learning. And it took me a little while to get into it and understand it and sort of sit. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through.
so
How you doing, Justin?
oh, I'm doing okay. I mean, I don't have a it's not really a COVID beard. I've had this for a while. I haven't had any shaving mistakes thus far. I kind of grew in my mustache area right here a little bit, but
I have a
you know,
COVID hairdo.
yeah, I've got the long hair, and actually people are like, Justin, it looks so good. Your hair looks so great. It's like I might just have to keep my hair the way it is, all nice and long. And Ruth Acheroff, she was saying, she's like, oh, but you got that touch of gray. She's like, it looks so nice. She's like, you got that distinction. You're looking very debonair. So I'm like, oh, all right,
Yeah,
Ruth.
it's good to not have a balding head like me, where you need hair in other places. So
Well, I mean, but I think it looks great, man. I think you look good. You look fresh. You look
I
you.
always look good.
You do. Well, let's be honest, you do. Um,
So anyway, let's. I guess we might as well get started.
yeah,
Hope you
and for
guys are doing
those,
well.
yeah,
Yeah,
and for everyone who's tuning in, we're doing this for you guys. And so if you guys have any questions while we're going through the presentation, or just questions about your cameras and how to take better landscapes, feel free to drop a comment in the feed, and we'll address that as we go along. Um, Mike Tieford says, I can give you some more gray if you want. It's like, well, Mike, it's all going to come in on its own. So I don't.
it's there's a lot there, Mike, already.
uh, so
All right.
uh,
So
we'll
let's
get started, Mike.
yeah,
Landscape
let's get started.
photography. It's I know it's one of my favorite things. I know Kenny Heckheist has told me on more than one occasion. He goes, Justin, it's okay to be the jack of all trades, but when you're the jack of all trades, you're the master of none. And he says, I think you should really focus on shooting and capturing landscapes. And I would agree with him. I really enjoy doing that. They're my
Yeah.
passion. I really like the night sky landscapes, so
Hmm.
astroscapes. But what does Olympus really bring to the table as far as why should someone pick up an Olympus camera to
Well,
capture landscapes? What's the
let me get into
advantage?
my presentation. It's actually that's part of the presentation to talk about. I actually have some of that in there.
Okay.
So I can go ahead and share my screen, and we could just kind of jump right into it, and then we could
Yeah,
talk through the presentation. The only thing is, I don't know if I can see us as I'm presenting.
that's
I
fine.
sort of just see the screen, so bear with
Yeah.
me. But we'll do that. Some of that's in the presentation. So if you want,
Okay.
I'll just start.
Yeah, let's get to it.
All
Let's
right.
let's let's get all of our
Let me
viewers
share here.
rocking and rolling here.
All right. Let's see what we got. Let me bring this up, Justin.
Yep. All right, I'll
Okay.
put that in there. And everyone else will be viewing it full screen. We get the little mini screen. So,
Okay. Yeah. All I see is full screen. So
oh, and
I
that
don't
that
see comments
little
or anything.
that little window that's right there that says you can click on that and drag it down to the bottom of the screen.
Oh, where's that?
The one in the
Oh,
middle.
shoot.
Yeah,
The one
down
in the
below.
middle. I can't get to it. Hold on. Let me escape out of this. The one that says hide your screen.
Yes, just click on it and drag it down. You should be able to move it.
Oh, yeah. 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 Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep,
Cool.
yeah, just move it out of the way and then go full screen again.
So now you don't see anything.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
it's
well, you see it in
somewhat.
the corner now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's out of the way.
All right. That should be good.
Yeah.
So
Now
basically,
we're.
what I label this is the mirrorless landscape, right? Um,
Is this one of yours,
and
Mike?
yeah. That's one
This
of mine. That's
that
actually
that's wonderful. Where
yeah.
did you take that?
Well, first of all, some of these you're going to see a little logo, and sorry about that. Usually in my presentations, I don't like having my images with logos. But I threw this together with, I had to pull some of these from Facebook because and
Oh,
some
that's
of my
fine.
older photos, I put logos on. This was actually, so this is in between I think it's exit 4. I think it's in between Columbus and Cincinnati. And I want to
Okay.
say exit 4. What the heck is the name of that exit? Midway. I think it's called Midway. And it's halfway in between. And I was driving one day, going between a couple of accounts, and I saw this little BP gas station. I pulled off, and I said, let me just go down through this farmland a little bit. You're in the middle of nowhere. And down the road, 55 miles an hour, no shoulder, but there's this tree, sitting on this plot of land. And up on the right-hand side of the screen, you can't see it really because I shot this with a 7 to 14 millimeter at 7 mil. But there's actually a cemetery up there. There's a farmhouse off to the left. And what I did is I cropped it into a panorama.
Yeah.
But it's shot at 7 millimeters. I just loved the way that it looked. The lone tree kind of got rid of a lot of the land on the bottom. And I've shot it at different times of the year.
That's good. That's a
Yeah.
nice little study to go back to.
The
Those
only issue with it, Justin, it's hard to pull over. You almost have to do it quick, jump out, shoot it, get back in the car, because there's tractor trailers on the road. It's hard to shoot it.
So it's off the highway. So you're actually like on the highway, or is it just like a country road?
No, it's a country road. And
Okay.
it's 55 miles an hour. There's no shoulder.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's jump out. Yeah, make sure nobody's there. Pull up, jump out, shoot, get back in the car, go.
Tricky business.
So yeah, it is. It is. But it's a great scene. You try to get the camera set and go. So
Yeah, very nice.
yeah.
So let's hop to it. I mean, I don't want to take too much away from your presentation, but
okay.
it's just a lovely shot to start with.
Yeah, it's one that I've had for a while, so I do like that. It's one of my favorite places to go. Anyway, most of you guys know me, but I've always sort of been into photography. Always been into the creative arts, illustration, things of that nature. So, and again, I don't have to get into this too much, but I do love photography, and I've been in the industry for 20 years as a trainer and a salesman. And I would say just literally in the last, I've been shooting for like 30 years, but in the last maybe 5-6 years, I feel like I've really, really gotten into it more. Like I've really felt more connected with it. And I feel that that's partly because of the mirrorless camera systems and the fact that they're just fun. And it's brought the fun back for me. And that's part of the reason why I feel I've gotten better, is I've had more fun with my photography again. And that's a big, big key with photography.
Well, and that's
So-
something that a lot of people have actually said about the Olympus system, is that it just makes shooting
Yeah.
fun again. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of the resounding thing that I hear revolving around the Olympus camera system.
Oh yeah, when I started back with the mirrorless cameras, I was at Fuji for a little while, and those cameras started it for me. Having the ability to change the aperture and the shutter speed and all of that, outside of the camera again, started to do that for me. And I had a really good time with those cameras. And then coming to Olympus and getting back into the 4/3 system, the smaller system, and the speed I got back at the time, having the rear and front dials like on the Nikon or Canon systems, it brought the speed back, plus the small size, plus some of those cool features we keep adding. and it really did. It brought the fun right around full circle. So, I really enjoy that. As far as landscape photography, so I'm not going to read this, but basically this is
Yeah.
from Wikipedia, and it kind of talks about what is landscape photography, right? And a lot of people think, well, landscape. I mean, it's a mountain. It's a scene of a mountain and a farm and whatever. But it doesn't have to necessarily be devoid of humans. I mean, or does it? I mean, what do we really consider a landscape? Could it be snow geese, flying across the landscape in a close-up, or could a person be in a landscape and still be considered a landscape, the image? So, I think that there's many ways to describe a landscape, and so I like to tell people not to keep it sort of tight, but to keep it a more broad sort of a definition. Just there's more to a landscape. It's what you want it to be. You know what I mean? That's sort of how I look at it. But it could be anything from industrial. It could be architecture. It could be nature. It could be a farm, right? It could be a scene. It could be your stars right at night, your night shots. Those are landscapes. So I think it's a very broad type of photography. And I love this quote from Ansel Adams. There are always two people in every picture, the photographer and the viewer.
Hmm.
And he's got some great quotes, but that's a great quote,
Always
because
very
you really want to
insightful.
grab that viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to grab that viewer, right? You want to bring them into your picture and show them what you're going after. So this is what we were talking about with this, and what does Olympus bring to the table? And this particular slide really, I think, works with every camera system, not just Olympus. We like to throw in the image stabilizer, but there's 4 elements for superb image quality. And typically, most manufacturers will say, well, there's 3 elements. There's the image sensor, a high quality image sensor, high quality lenses, right? A fast processor or a good processor. And you combine those 3 and you have a good image.
Hmm.
With Olympus, we like to also throw in that stabilizer. We say there's 4 elements to superb image quality. You put like a high quality Pro Zuko lens on your camera, on your good processor, like for instance the EM1 series, EM5 series cameras, that TruePic 9 or the TruePic 8 processor, plus the 5-axis image stabilizer, and you got just this great image quality because you're combining all the good stuff into one. And it really is a big testament when you're shooting not just landscape, but I think everything, Justin. When
Hmm.
you put a high quality lens on your camera, it's amazing when your eyes open up, right? And you see that, and it's amazing what comes back to your images. And
Well,
that's the first step.
well, the old adage stands. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And one of the things with cameras is you can get a great camera or you can get a cheap camera. But if you get a
Yep.
good lens and you put it in front of a cheap camera, you can make that camera really sing. And it
Yeah.
boils down to the quality of, if you have cataracts in your eyes, you're not seeing the world as if you would without them. So
It's true.
it's the same can be said for a good piece of glass. If you've got a great lens in combination with a great sensor, you can create some great images.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you can make good images with about any camera these
Hmm.
days, but to step up, a lot of people ask, well, is that pro lens worth the price? And
Hmm.
if you're doing a lot of shooting with it, it really is, because even if your images are looking really good, that's sort of the next stage, and it makes it look even better. You'll see more crispness, and part of it is the coatings, the quality of the lens, the way it's built. One of the benefits of the Olympus cameras with landscape is the weather resistance. I mean, being out in nature, right? Being out in the elements, whether you're shooting a lighthouse or, guys like Jamie, right? Jamie McDonald, who are out there with the lighthouses with the water hitting them, you know, even like we mentioned Peter Baumgarten a couple weeks ago with the night scenes.
Hmm.
There's a shot of him that one of my coworkers took. He went up to New England and he was shooting one of the lighthouses, and he's in the water. I mean, he's in the ocean, and the waves are hitting him, and he's shooting this thing, and it's amazing. The camera's in there, and the tripod, it's in the water, and the water's splashing all over him, and that's testament to the cameras. I mean, they really, really do have great weather resistance. This is a real world image. I like to throw those in. So as an example, this was me Actually, a couple of years ago when the EM1X came out, they trained us. Olympus brought us to Daytona, and we watched some of the cars racing, and we were, given some instruction on how to shoot. And it started to pour outside, and I was shooting a few cars, and a buddy of mine took this image, my coworker, and it was just pouring, And if not for the hood on that 40 to 150, the lens would obviously have water spots. But I got some great images being able to shoot in the rain like that. It got cold too, but it was fun. So the weather resistance, I would say, it's renowned and it's second to none. They really have, hands down, one of the best, if not the best, weather resistance in the pro cameras for sure. So
Yeah, and that's not just the light rain. I mean, that's like it looks like cats and dogs. I mean,
that was pouring.
Yeah, some pretty big stuff.
Yeah, it's dripping right off there. So power and portability, and this isn't to make fun of another brand. When you look at this slide, that's not what this slide's going for. It's the idea that when you're traveling or you're hiking, the ability to not have to bring a tripod or leave a tripod on your backpack and bring a smaller tripod. Obviously this is an example of the 300 millimeter versus a 600 millimeter from a competitor. But what it shows is that with the 4/3 system, you do have the equivalence to play with, with your focal range. So you do have that reach because of the smaller sensor size. And that's a benefit as much as anything else, because for my system, this gives you that reach and the ability to hand hold with the 5-axis stabilizer. And so that's what this graphic is showing. To hike with all that equipment and have to carry all of that and then to have to balance it. I've seen people take shots with like 8 millimeter lenses, even that they can take the camera, in Alaska and put it up over something that they could normally not hold and shoot, polar bears and things like that. So I've seen some pretty neat stuff that testament to the system that they were only able to get because of a smaller, lighter system. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And that's some of the things I think Olympus brings to the table. It's going to be, Justin, really the high quality lenses. I mean, our optics, we've been making optics for 100 years, so 101 years. So they really have amazing optics. That's what really drives us. Some of the benefits in the camera system, which you'll see in this presentation a little bit in my images, like the live neutral density, which allows you to have filters built into the camera system. Live composition, for doing things like star trails, which is another type of landscape, right? Having the ability to have a high resolution for things like landscape. So if you want to do your 20 meg sensor and you want to do a 50 meg or 80 meg image, you can, or a handheld on the EM1X or the EM1 Mark III. So again, I think there's more, but I think that's some of the key features that really make this system shine when it comes to landscape. I love the ability to walk into a woods with either a small tripod and a little 12 millimeter and a small camera like an EM5 and just walk in, set it up, shoot a waterfall. Or if I go hiking, I don't want to carry a tripod, 12 to 100 on my EM1 III, just throw it on my strap and walk around. And I know that I can get a lot of things done with that kit. And that's what I love about the system.
Yeah, I know. I've been able to capture waterfalls with the 7 to 14 at a half a second, or 2 seconds handheld without a tripod, and the images look great. So that allowed me when I was in Colorado to, I'm hiking more freely with that, not having to carry my tripod. I can leave it in the car, and I can just I'm relying on the camera's image stabilization to get the shots that I want.
Yeah, I think, and it does take time, right? I mean, the one thing about the 4/3 system, I feel, is that it's easy to get frustrated in the beginning. I think you really have to learn your camera system, no matter what it is, but you really have to learn sort of the shortcomings and the benefits, and you have to know how to work that, right? Because you're the photographer, right? The camera's not the photographer. It's just the tool to get you there. And so even like hand holding at a half a second or using the built-in live ND on the EM1X or EM1 III, it takes time if you're going to hand hold that, because like, for instance, that is meant to be on a tripod, but you can hand hold it. So there's things you can do and things you can play with once you learn the system and you kind of know what you can do and what the camera can do. And I think that also helps. So here I wanted to throw some tips together to help improve your images, and just in general, some tips that I like to throw out there for landscape. And some of these are just tips that I've gathered, and some are just things that I like to throw in. So maximize the use of depth of field in your images, right? So and what I mean by that is, when you're shooting, and there is no right or wrong, in my opinion. I mean, do you want to keep the overall image in focus? A lot of times when I'm shooting a landscape, I like to keep everything in focus. So I'm using like an aperture of like maybe f8 to f16, typically f8 to f11 for me. Do you want to focus on an object in front of you? Maybe there's like a nice colorful leaf on a rock, and then keep the rest of the image out of focus. So maybe you use like, a 2.8 to an f4, kind of focus on that one object, leave a waterfall in the background a little bit out, right? Or do you want to play with focus stacking or focus bracketing? And that is an amazing tool for keeping all of that in focus. So again, with that idea of a waterfall and then like a leaf on a rock, and keeping that whole thing in focus, focus bracketing and focus stacking will do that. And that's amazing. And I haven't really played with that a lot. But again, if you check out Peter Baumgarten, one of our visionaries, as an example, I'm not sure if Frank has done that. Frank Smith, he might have played with that a little bit too. But both of those guys do a lot with the focus stacking, focus bracketing, and sort of playing with keeping that all in focus. So I would check them out. I don't know if you've played with that, Justin.
No, I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I'm still rocking the EM1 Mark II. I haven't
Yeah.
had a chance to mess around with the focus stacking. A lot of what I've done has just been kind of shots on the go. I went
Yeah.
out this last weekend and shot some landscapes, did some handheld long exposures. My buddy got the
Nice.
EM1 Mark III, so he
Yep.
was messing around with live ND. We went to the big windmills up north, the electric windmills,
I saw those.
and yeah, you'll see those on your way to Ludington. We actually took the back way up that way,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was just it's really interesting. The way that we went up to Hesperia that one time, right? To do
Oh
the
yeah.
Star Trail over the lake. Yeah, if you keep on
Yep.
going north, you'll eventually run into. We ran into the back roads of like just all of a sudden just over the horizon there they were, and like, oh hey, let's go shoot those. So yeah, it was really fun.
That's amazing. And when you see something like that, something new and fresh, it really
Hmm.
like it juices up your imagination, right? I mean, it's always cool to have something new to play with,
Yeah,
so
we were
you can
hoping to
always
get
revisit it.
yeah we were hoping to get the orchards in flower, in
Hmm.
bloom, and those are kind of the freeze happened here, so there's a little bit of that we're dealing with, but they're actually we're still a little behind, so there's a chance
Yeah,
to go up there and still catch them in bloom, so we're gonna try to get that this weekend.
it's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
I throw in on here to get back. I throw in using a tripod when needed, and really, I mean, you should always have a tripod with you if
Hmm.
you're out hiking or doing landscape. But there's times you don't want to. There's times you just want to go for a hike. But if you're like me, you always bring your camera, and so you don't want to like leave it. So you'll skip the tripod, bring the camera. And
Hmm.
with the Olympus, you can do that. I mean, you can really get away with a lot without a tripod. But I still try to
Best
use a good
practice.
tripod.
Yeah,
Yeah.
best practice is with one, and it's very helpful when you do the high res mode. If you want the full high res mode, you're going to need a
Oh
tripod.
yeah. Yeah, and turn off the stabilizer when you're on a tripod. That's recommended. Not as necessary as it used to be. I mean, I forget a lot of times now.
Hmm.
The idea of that was, when you have when you have a stabilizer system in your camera or in your lens, typically what it's doing, obviously, is it's looking for movement. When you're on a tripod, it's supposed to keep your camera stable, but if your image stabilizer is still turned to on, the idea is that it's still looking for movement. So it could actually give you an image that's out of focus. I haven't had that issue, and I think the systems are so smart now. It's hard to get that issue. So, but if you can remember to turn it off and turn it on, it's always good practice to turn it off. So that's something that's definitely something it's a good tip. And as far as tripods, just to touch on that again, I mean, I use carbon fiber a lot because you can stick it in water. You can not have to worry about it rusting. It's lighter weight, but aluminum is great too. I mean, they're both great. You could spend a lot of money or a little bit of money. Justin has a lot of different tripods. And I have both, but a lot of times I'll grab that carbon, Justin, when I'm doing landscape.
Yeah, and I actually just got a bunch of tripods in from Vanguard, so I got a lot of
Hmm.
smaller, more compact tripods, and they're all, except for the carbon fiber ones, they're all priced below $200. I even think they're below
Yeah,
179. So we're
it's
talking
a good
things that are
price.
only about this big. So Vanguard has got a
Yeah,
really a great selection of small travel tripods right now. So on top of our ProMaster XC525M series. We've got those as well that you guys can look into, and I'd be happy to
yeah, I
show them
have
to
one of
you.
those. Those are good. I have one of those. I have a few tripods, but I got to say that that's one thing in your photography. It is a hobby that costs money, and when you buy a good tripod, it's there's nothing like it. You will use it, and I bought a Bogan years ago, and I've kind of upgraded now, and you'll always have it. And so it's always good to spend the money on a good tripod when you're ready. Save the money and spend the money on a good one that's for your needs, as good as you can afford for your needs. So, one of my tips, Justin, is look for a more interesting angle or view
Hmm.
of the scene. So, a lot of times we're shooting an image. There might even be a ton of people where you're at shooting an image. Sometimes, if you turn around, take a step back, look behind you, maybe look at a different angle, maybe even capture all them people taking the shot. Sometimes it's more interesting to just kind of take a step back, take a breath, and look around. And so that's one of my tips there. Movement is always fun. So again, this is something like where we talked about like a neutral density filter or something of that nature, where maybe you want the clouds to move a little bit in your scene, or maybe you want the water to look a little more like smooth, and that would be a longer exposure so that you can get that movement. But you might need something like a neutral density filter, which and I'll get into that a little more further into the presentation. But if you guys don't know, a neutral density filter is a dark filter that will cut down the light coming into your camera so that you can have a longer exposure while you're in a more lit area. Um, I'll get into that a little bit. Look for reflections, Justin. So I love reflections, man. I think Frank Smith, one of my visionaries, is probably the king of reflections. So if you guys like reflections, check out Frank Smith's photography. He does a lot of architectural work and a lot of reflections within that work, and he's amazing at it. But reflections are always fun if you find a puddle, if you're looking at water. It just really enhances the image. So definitely something to look for. Fall foliage, you think of a nice like lake scene, with the fall foliage, and you have kind of that dual shot, right? The sky and the trees, and then you have the same thing in the waters reflecting that, the mirror image. Really cool stuff. So rule of thirds is really big. I have a sample in here, or an example. It's probably not the greatest, but it might give you an idea about a rule of thirds. And that's just one of the rules of photography. Some people say to not go by the rules, don't worry about them. I'm still kind of die hard on, learn some of the rules and then go ahead and break them. It's okay to break the rules once you kind of know what they are. And the rule of thirds, I'll give you a visual further in so you see that. But it helps you to bring the viewer into your scene. It helps you to give a well balanced image overall. And there's probably more than likely on your camera, you might be able to have a grid that actually shows up. And I'll show you what that looks like further in. And to be
And,
honest with you, after a while, you start to visualize it as you're shooting.
and I would say yeah, what a lot of these rules, rules of composition,
Yep.
they're more or less guidelines. Rules are meant to be broken. It's okay to break the rules, but it's okay to think and visualize these scenes in that manner when you're capturing them. And when
Sure.
the more you start to use rule of thirds, the more you'll see it, like what you're saying, you'll see it without seeing it, and
Hmm.
I know the Olympus cameras are set up so that you can do a lot of the different kinds of rules of composition. You've got the triangles, you've
Right.
got
You could put the
uh,
grids in there. Yeah.
yeah, and those are very helpful. So if you guys already have an Olympus camera and you like to shoot landscapes, we're probably going to talk about how to access the view of the grids.
Yeah, we could figure it out. It's not something
Okay.
I put on there, but I could definitely get into the menu and find that. Not a
Yeah,
problem at
if you
all.
guys want to know how to do that, you can ask and we can kind of quick talk you through it, or you can always call me while I'm at the store.
Yeah, yeah, not a problem.
Yeah.
So the last one, Justin, and this is one that I like to throw in. And again, there's more rules, more tips, but this is just what I like to talk about. Research the area. And I also like to throw in that, let someone know where you'll be. And part of that is, just I go alone to a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
I live near a national park, and there's a lot of erosion going on, which you guys know where you are in Muskegon.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've seen some, I'm in my 40s. I'm not old, but I'm getting there. And I've seen some instances where people have fallen off the side of a cliff. They've fallen down different sides of hills and mountains where people don't find them for a few days. They fall like just underneath something like a cavity where
Mm-hmm.
nobody sees them. Nobody can hear them. One guy broke his hip one time. He was jogging in my area. So I always tell
Jeepers.
people, let people know where you're going. If you're going on a weekend trip, you're going on a Saturday somewhere, you're going to spend the day shooting waterfalls 2 hours away from home. Just let somebody know, hey, I'm going to be out here shooting waterfalls. Send someone a text, put it on Facebook where you're going to be, just so that people start to wonder where you're at if you don't come back, so they can come look for you. And I know it
Well,
sounds crazy when you're young, but you never know.
well, and the other thing I would say to add to that is it sounds like a good
Yeah,
excuse to have a photo buddy, to
that's
someone
true.
or a group of people you can go out and shoot with.
Hmm. Yeah, photo buddies are great. A group of people, having a couple of people, it's always fun to have more people. But there's times we like to go alone or we just can't grab anybody. So in those times, I would just, let people know, hey, I'm going to shoot. That way they think about you.
Yeah.
So not something I thought about 5 years ago, but the more I go out into the wilderness, the more I start to think about it. So try using leading lines, right? So leading lines they're vertical, horizontal, or diagonal lines that attract a viewer's attention. They lead the eye into your image, right, to a critical area. So they show depth sometimes in your image. So, like for example, this image, it's just this log, this dead log, kind of going into that little waterfall there. It's kind of like in your face, but it shows that leading line. And honestly, me starting out with landscape, this is where I started. This is what I was looking for. And it's, even though it's kind of obvious, it's kind of what I was looking for. When I started, um, I couldn't see landscapes 6 years ago. I have a good friend back home in New York that was taught himself, and he's actually very good at doing this stuff, and he's gotten good. And told him one time, I said, how do you see the landscape? I don't know what focal length to use. I don't know what I'm looking at. And he's like, I just see it, and taking on the job with Olympus, I started driving more, traveling to my dealers in the Midwest or central region of the United States. And so I had more time to pull off the side of the road, shoot a barn, shoot a different scene, shoot some waterfalls. And after a while, I started to finally see. You start to see what focal length to use, kind of what you're looking at. And I'll show you some of the focal lengths that I do use, but you really start to figure out what you're looking at. Don't forget that when you shoot with like a cell phone, you're probably shooting at what, like a 22 millimeter, Justin? I mean, it's a fairly
It
wide.
it depends. I think there's one that's wider than 14 millimeters, and then there's one
Yeah,
that's
they're
going to be
pretty wide.
more like 35. So it's yeah,
Right.
they have a decent range, especially if you have one of the newer 10s or above. You're getting three lenses in the front of your camera.
Right. Those are a little different. I meant more like the old school. Like I have an X. It's got one, the iPhone X has one focal length. I mean, you could zoom like 10 times or whatever, but the initial length, we all kind of get used to this sort of wide, you're doing portraits that are wide. But it's good to learn the different focal lengths and really know. That's one of the great things about interchangeable lens cameras, is that we can change these lenses and really get this image quality out of the different focal lengths. So,
And
um,
and, and speaking of lenses and focal lengths, Mando Horton wants to know what lens you use to capture this shot, and I want to fancy a guess, the 7 to 14.
So I shot this. You're going to laugh at me. I don't know. I shot this about 4 or 5 years ago, and believe it or not, it's in Indiana. Um, I think it's a 7 to 14.
Yeah,
It may be the 12 f2.
interesting. Which
Yeah,
would
it could be the
yeah.
12. I know it's wide, but it could be the 12 f2. I was shooting the 12 a lot back then, and but the 7 to 14 is like, it became like my go-to lens for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
This may very well be the 12.
Okay.
12 is
Well,
very wide. You don't realize it, but that 24 millimeter equivalent is very wide. So,
and a lot of people, most landscapes, are around 24 millimeters. So
mhm.
the only, it's typically anywhere from 14 millimeters to 24 millimeters. Sometimes 35. You can get a landscape. If you want tighter landscapes, you will start to go higher in your focal length. But most people who are
Yeah.
shooting wide will shoot anywhere between 14 and 24.
Yeah, and I think that this one was actually 12 in my system because that waterfall wasn't far from me. So
Hmm.
the 7 millimeter would have thrown it way out there. Just so you know, Amanda, I believe you're shooting Sony
Hmm.
A7s. So that would be 24 millimeter in your system. So
Hmm.
the 4/3 Olympus is 2 times equivalent for the 35 millimeter. So we always equate. So my 12 millimeter will be your 24 millimeter. But it's nice and wide. So your normal lens, like a 24 to 70, you open it up to 24.
Or you could get one of the new Sigma 14 to 24s for the
Yeah,
Sony system, which is a
which has
great
even
color,
wider.
great
Yeah,
sharpness. Yeah, it's
yeah.
excellent. Yep.
So this is my filter page, and I don't use a lot of filters. I'd like to use a lot more. I know someone like Jamie's using a lot more. Mark Miller. I put the Benro here because that's what I use. But there's a
Hmm.
lot of great filters. You could talk about some of those, Justin, as we go.
Yeah.
Um, but they're a great addition to your kit. I use the ones that slip in, like the image here that I took from the Benro site. That's why I put their little logo and stuff. I kind of stole it, but I do like their stuff. And for me, I only have a little bit of a kit right now. I have a 6-stop ND, a 10-stop, a graduated ND, and a circular polarizer. So the polarizer is almost a hands down the first filter you want to get off the bat, right? Maybe a protection filter and then a polarizer. And
Hmm.
the polarizer is going to cut your reflections. It's going to give you a darker sky. It's going to really enhance your colors. So think of like fall foliage, right? It really enhances those colors, the polarizer. So that hands down is probably the first one you want to buy. And from there, Justin, I would say NDs are always fun because you can cut down that light now and really work with like the water movement, like for waterfalls or, when you're doing sunsets, you can use ND. Graduated ND is just like where you have a dark filter and it kind of fades into a light or no filter. So if you have like the sky and the ground area, you can sort of have a longer exposure and not blow out the sky. That's sort of where you might use that as an example. But Justin, you can go ahead if you want to talk about any other filters or any brands that you may have that you
Sure.
recommend.
One of the advantages we spoke of earlier with Olympus is that with the EM1 Mark III and the
Hmm.
EM1X, you have the luxury of built-in neutral density filters, so that instead
Yep.
of having to buy $1,000 system like the Benro system that's here, where you have to buy the holder and the holder has to fit around your lens.
Yep.
Some of them only fit threaded filters, so if you have like a 7 to 14 millimeter or a 14 to 24 millimeter, they just don't have that threaded filter thread on the front, so you won't be able to put it on unless you have a special holder. And I know those special holders cost a good chunk of money to do that. I'm not discouraging anyone from using those. They are very helpful, especially if you have, like you were saying, a very bright sky and a darker
Right.
foreground. Having those graduated filters allows you to balance the exposure between the sky and the ground so that you're not going to lose your information in the sky, or you don't have to take two separate exposures, one for the landscape, one for the sky, and then put them together in post-production.
Right. Exactly.
Because the sky can change, and then the other thing is too, you can get some unique exposures where maybe you can drag the shutter and you can get some nice wispy movement out of the clouds, which you wouldn't normally
Right.
get with the two separate exposures. A polarizer, I would say, outside of a protection filter, is hands down. You're right on the money with that. I was out shooting this last weekend up north, and the one thing I do wish I had was a circular polarizer because my sky
Yeah.
it was just too blue. It wasn't the right shade of blue. It was just kind of that nice light cyanish blue, and I wanted kind of that deep blue. And you're right on the money with popping colors of the leaves. And what I found that why it pops the color of the leaves is that leaves they can kind of have like a waxy surface, and people don't
Right.
realize that leaves are actually reflecting sunlight. As much as they are absorbing the light, they do
Hmm.
reflect the light. So a polarizer is cutting down the reflection. So that's what you're seeing is you're able to cut that bouncing of the light off of the the surface of water, a car, a window, and the leaves. Anything that has a somewhat reflective surface, you're cutting down that refraction. So it just helps to create stronger photographs. So that's outside of neutral density filters and such, a polarizer is a must. So yeah.
One of the cool things, Justin, I put a little asterisk here, the Live ND feature. So what I
Hmm.
like to do is put it on one of the function buttons. I actually put it on the button that is next to the lens in the front.
Yeah, so did my friend.
And
He the depth of field preview, he replaced that with the Live
right, it's what
ND.
I do. I don't know if he knows this, but if you turn the command dial, it'll actually change the intensity.
Oh, yeah, I think we
So,
did something with that.
so if you press the button and you're on ND32, you turn
You
it
can
down,
change
you
it
can
to
go down to,
ND4. Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah, it's
Nice.
kind of cool. So a good example. So I'll be getting to some images in a minute, you guys. I'm going to book a little bit, but because the images I can kind of show you some of the lenses I've used and things of that nature. But some focus aids for landscape and other scenarios. Focus peaking is awesome. I use focus peaking almost hands down all the time in my landscapes. It's a manual focus assist, and I'm always manually focusing my landscapes, or 90% of the time anyway. It's just something I've become accustomed to. And I use red, just like in this example on the right here, that shows the Olympus lens cap. And basically, when you turn your manual focus ring on the lens, you'll see a red highlight, and that's your focus peaking. That tells you what area is in focus. So the red highlight is what's in focus. And the way to get into that is you go into your menu, you turn on manual focus assist in your gear menu, A4, you turn peaking on, and then down further, in D3, you can actually change your peaking settings. And I believe right off the bat, it's red, I want to say. But I like to change the intensity to high under D3 in the gear menu. And it's really a great feature to have. Once you turn it on in the menu, it's on, and you don't have to worry about doing it again. It's one of those things where you set it and forget it. But I love having focus peak. So great
Amanda
feature.
just Amanda just said, "I learned how to do this recently."
Yeah.
I got my red on.
Yeah, Focus Peak is great, and actually Sony or Panasonic, I can't remember which one, were the first to do that, and it came from
Sony.
video, and it
I
came
think
from their video. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
which
think
is
it was
really
Sony.
cool. So we've
And
all
and
sort of adapted that.
And the thing that I've done too, and so I don't accidentally record videos because
Mhm.
I associate the red of the focus peaking. I actually changed my record button and changed that to my peaking button so that it's like if I want to
Right,
have put
right,
peaking turned on, it's the red. So I'm hitting the record button as to not accidentally record videos, but to use
right.
my
That makes
focus
sense.
peaking. Yeah.
And that's a good point you brought up. I mean, you can pull your lens back on the Olympus or put your camera into manual focus. You're in Focus Peak. But let's say you put a Laowa lens on, the brand Laowa, where you have like all manual focus, right? Um, the camera doesn't know that that lens is on the camera because there's no electrical contacts on
Hmm.
the lens. Or let's say you adapt an old Leica lens. The camera doesn't know there's a lens on theoretically. So you want to tell the camera to put peaking on. Even if it's on in the menu, you set it under the manual focus assist, the camera still doesn't know if there's no electric contact, if there's nothing talking back and forth between the camera and the lens. So in that case, Justin, just like you said, you would set it to a function button and you could turn it on and off. So you know that the lens is on. You just do it manually. So that's a great way to do that. Some of the gear I take with me, you guys. That's an old photo, by the way. For me, I'm kind of lucky with Olympus because I'm a salesman, so I do get some samples. So I always use a lot of the higher end stuff. So the bodies that I would take with me now would be the EM1X and the EM13. Obviously, it's the high end. Previously, the EM12, but I love the EM53, even though I'm not mentioning it here. I'm putting down some of the stuff I take.
Hmm.
The EM53 is amazing for landscape. It's very similar to the EM1 series, and it's smaller and lighter. So that with a 12 to 45 would be amazing. Um, but the lenses that I've kind of become accustomed to myself, and there's more. There's a 12 to 40, the 12 to 45. But I love, first of all, the 12 millimeter f2 is one of my premium lenses. It's not weatherproof, but it's a super sharp lens.
And it's
It's
small.
it's just a beautiful. It's small. It's like $699 right now. I believe there's a $100 rebate, and it's small, lightweight. It's an f2. It's great for stars because it's an f2. It's nice and small and wide, and it just fits great on everything from a pen to an EM5 to an EM1. I just love that lens. However, the 12 to 100 came out, and it's such a versatile lens. It's an f4, but it's got the dual, stabilizer on it, so I have dual stabilization or sync stabilization in the camera system. It is just an amazing lens. It feels great on the 1 series cameras, the OMD EM1, and it is just so sharp from 12 to 100. I really love. I would say that it's one of the sharpest in the industry, if not the sharpest, all-in-one zoom. It's just a great lens to leave on your camera. And I love it at 12. I love it at 100. The reason I leave this lens on a lot is because I'm driving once again. And if I see a barn scene or a silo and I want to zoom in a little bit, I can. If I want to go to 12, I can. And it's one lens on the camera. So I've really fallen in love with that lens. 7 to 14, Justin, one of my favorites. I love being at 7 millimeters when I shoot that lens. You do get some flare a lot because it's such a bulbous lens. But I actually love the way it looks on that lens, so it doesn't bother me. And you learn to sort of incorporate it into some of your scenes that you're shooting, believe it or not. 40 to 150 Pro and the 300 millimeter Pro. Those, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going to go out all day, throw them in the bag. Maybe there's going to be some birds. I may bring those. The 40 to 150 is a great lens to, again, to zoom in and just like, if you have like, say, again, I'll say a barn silo, and you have like a woods behind that's further away, and you want to compress that scene, those long lenses really compress that background and bring them closer. A lot of times you'll see a shot of, as an example, maybe the Brooklyn Bridge, and you'll see the Empire State Building, and it looks like it's right there behind the bridge. It's really not. It's a couple miles away. But when you compress it with those lenses, a long lens, it brings it right in. So that's kind of the same idea. So I love those lenses. I love those bodies. Again, always a tripod. I usually bring a knife or a multi-tool, cleaning cloths, water, my filters, always my iPhone or a phone, so you have some kind of a remote. I don't personally use the remote a lot on the phone. I think it's great. I use it sometimes more than I realize when I'm out in the field, but I bring an Olympus remote cable. I'm still old school. I love having the remote. So that's sort of my gear. And what I use. I know we're getting kind of towards time, Justin, but I want to go through some images if I can.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just some of the things I shoot and go through some of the tips that I had given in the beginning. For instance, this shot was in Colorado, and it shows that large depth of field, right? It was probably shot, I don't have all my settings, but I would say I was probably at f8 or f11 on this. It's a 12 to 100. And this is the kind of scene where you just can't get a bad picture. Like even if you put the camera in auto, you'll probably get this. But that's Colorado, right? So this was in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, just good layers. You've got the layer of water, the trees, and then the mountain line. And when you talk about rules of thirds, typically if your area of what the viewer should be interested in is typically 2/3 of the image, when the part that's not as interesting is 1/3 of the image. And so that third you can see is the sky. There's that third up towards the sky, and then the bottom 2/3 is all the visual interest. Even though the sky is interesting, that's where all the detail is in the 2/3 chunk.
Yeah, so it really shows that. This was something I shot with an old pen camera. It's infrared. I had it transferred to infrared, and this is with a 12 to 100 on the old EP2. That's a camera from 2009, I believe, 2008. But the idea is that it was kind of a cool shot over in Mentor, Ohio on Lake Erie. But the reason I put this in, you guys, is because, again, this was shot at a different time, same scene, a little bit different of an angle or a different spot on the bridge, on the walkway. And this was shot with the EM1X, same lens. The idea is that, is this more interesting? Is it a more interesting view? There's a couple of people, up in the pavilion up there. They're kind of looking out into the water. To me, it's a little bit more interesting than the infrared shot, even though I love the infrared shot. So, the idea is that you can always shoot the same thing many different ways. So different weather, different days, different seasons. Go back and check it out. It might even be something that wasn't as interesting before. It might be more interesting the next time. This is where you show some movement. And this, Justin, is with that new 12 to 45 f4 Pro.
Nice.
I actually I had it for a little while. It's a initial production sample, and I threw it on the M1X. I almost fell in the water because it was icy, but I had my little tripod, and this is the live ND mode. So this shows you how good that mode is. I mean, it's amazing, man. It's just like having your filter on there. The way it works on the Olympus is it uses different exposures to create. You're almost like having almost like an HDR effect, right?
Hmm.
Having different exposures. It puts them all together, and it really only changes it in the movement, the different movement that's going on in the image. So, but that's over near my house in Ohio. So this is where I kind of show that rule of thirds. This is not the greatest picture, probably, Justin, for it, and not the right size, but that gives you an idea of a visual
Hmm.
of what the rule of thirds looks like, right? So this is me visualizing it. I was kind of close, but it gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. You have these 9 squares, and you sort of break up the image into these different thirds. And what you want to do to bring your viewer in or what have you and make it more interesting is you want to have some of your main focus, some of your key points, maybe in those intersecting lines, or like Justin said, you might want to have the sky be in the top third, or maybe kind of work with your different lines within the image, your horizon and stuff like that, to really bring that visual to the viewer there, lead them into that picture, right?
Agreed.
So, people to the landscape. This is my daughter. This is Green Lake State Park in Syracuse, New York. Believe it or not, um, that water's crystal clear, man. But there's some reflection again. That's at 7 to 14, right? And then I put her right in the middle, so that I shot it at 7 millimeters, super wide. I'm right in front of her, but it looks like she's a little further out,
Hmm.
and she's not distorted that much because she's in the center of the lens. So if she was towards the side, one of the right or left sides, she would have kind of looked a little bit weird, a little bit awkward. It would have really stretched her body a little bit. But being in the center looks almost normal, and then you have this wide angle. So I use the trees to frame the image. I just like the way it looked. The lighting was good that day. The water was beautiful, and I like to add her to the landscape sometimes. It just makes it more interesting to me. So again, is that considered a landscape? Um, I
Yeah.
consider that a landscape.
Hmm.
So what about that? Would you consider that a landscape?
I don't know. That one is almost like an interesting kind of
Self-portrait?
portrait. Yeah, it's like a interesting self-portrait for sure. Because your focus is on your eyes, and yeah, you're driving, but it's a cool view. I don't know. It's like one of those hybrid things.
Yeah, I was driving down the road and I was holding the camera behind my shoulder and shooting with a 12 millimeter 12. Must have taken 50 shots. There was lightning going on and stuff, but I didn't catch any. It was one of those things, but I like the way that came out with the movement, in
Yeah.
the grass or the desert. It's in Texas, going to get my girls, and but again, I got a lot of landscape in there, so I just like to throw that in there to kind of have you think a little bit. Would that be considered a landscape? It could be. It could be a portrait. It could be you in the landscape. This is with the EM1X again and the 12 to 100. You'll see a lot of my images taken with that 12 to 100. I just love that lens. So this was where I'm at now. This is in Florida, Pine Island, and if you wait, sometimes the right moment comes by. This was a decent sunset. It wasn't great. It was great color, but it wasn't really amazing. But that gold color was there for a minute. But this pelican came by. I shot a few images and had him lined right up there with that sun a little bit. And I thought it looked kind of cool, man. So again, I think the image would be a little more bland without that pelican in there, without that
Yeah,
silhouette.
definitely would be boring. And the
But
only
it's
way
kind
to
of cool.
Oh yeah, it's great.
So sometimes you wait for that right moment to present itself. This was the same thing. This is the same place where the pelican was, just that it was a different lens. This is 7 to 14, throws that background out. And this kayaker was coming through, and he was coming right towards me on this little beach. And I started taking some images of him as he was coming towards me on the tripod. Just pop, 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 pop. EM12, 7 to 14. I had the 12 to 100 on my EM1X, and I was hand holding it. Had this one on the tripod, and I love the way this one is. It sort of puts him. You got the rock on the right, again silhouetting him with the background. It sort of made the shot because again, that's a dull sunset. There's not much going on. so you find an interesting subject. This was around the corner from me. I had my neighbor take me around. I'm still learning the area, believe it or not. I like to say that. 5 years, still learning the area. Um, but I said, let's go out for a ride. He goes, where do you want to find? I said, show me some barns. So we drove around. I thought this was so cool, this barn. It was just a beautiful fall day. Not much color going on. The leaves are mostly gone. About 2 minutes before this shot, there was a golden light, Justin, all along the back ridge. And I could see it lighting all them trees in the back. And I go, turn around. I have to get that. And we pull in the driveway, and it was gone. But still cool. You got that blue sky, the nice clouds. And I love the top of that barn, man. It's got the 1904 in the shingles. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, it's nice. You got these two leading lines going, away from the center, so it's almost, it's not quite symmetrical, but it has that kind of symmetrical feel where you give your viewer two different ways you can go, and it's kind of like, well, all things lead to the barn, but you're going away from it.
Yeah. And, the nice thing is that this was out of a Ford F-150 out of the passenger window. Sometimes you just don't have to go anywhere.
The other thing that's interesting too, when you look at those two paths going like this, creating that triangle, you look above the barn, you got that same shape, from the roof of the barn going out to the clouds, because it's just kind of void of clouds there. So it's nice how those two shapes it's like a rhombus, it's half of a pentagon. You've just got that, hexagon, half of a hexagon right there. Yeah.
And I think that's unintentional, but it's kind of intentional. Like, I think you sort of see certain things. You go through your images. You have a couple of these. You go through them, and you see that, right? You start to pick it out. So it's almost like don't think too much. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. You start to see things a little bit. This was the reason why this is interesting to me is because this is fall, and I was trying to get color up in the Adirondacks in New York, and it's not too far from Inlet, New York, if anybody knows where that is. And there's only a little bit of color. It really wasn't. It was 2 weeks later. It really exploded. I was a little bit early. Should have been late. But this was the fog coming up in the morning. And it was a Saturday, and it was maybe like 6 o'clock, 5:30 a.m., 6 o'clock. And there's nobody on the road yet. And where this scene is, there's a turn, and it's 55 miles an hour, and there's nowhere to go. You cannot stand there and take a picture. But there was nobody on the road this day. It's always busy there. So I pulled over quick. I ran about a quarter mile down the road, started shooting this handheld high resolution on the EM1X with the 12-100. I just love the way the fog came off. There's that nice little camp there, and it just disappears into the water. So it just reminds me of a campy, Adirondack sort of a place.
That'd be interesting as a black and white too, just because you don't have a lot of color.
There's not a lot of color.
Yeah, you can just make it black and white and just throw the contrast a little bit, and I think it would be really moody.
I might do that. That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
One thing I love doing, you guys, is panoramas. I do them in Lightroom. I take maybe 4 or 5 shots. These are probably 5-shot panoramas, and then I stitch them together in Lightroom. Just file merge, panorama. The top one is with the old EM5 using the 12-100. That's in upstate New York. Really cool looking barn. It's sort of a different type of barn, so I love shooting that. That's near where I grew up. And the bottom one is actually in Michigan near Lansing. I don't know the town. I just got off the road, started driving, and that's with the EM5 III. It was just kind of interesting how the light was in the clouds, so just sort of processed it a little differently. But I love doing panoramas. For some reason, when I shoot barns and farms, I just see it wider like that than I do just a barn sometimes. So this is 12-100 again. You can see where I'm cannibalizing all my lenses. But this is on the EM1 and this is another one where it's the side of the road. When you're on those interstates, this is on Route 71 going up through, or Interstate 71 going up through Michigan. Through Ohio, obviously. And I was going home one day in between Columbus and Cleveland, and there's this, just this cool barn. It's always right there, and I never see it like this, where you have this blue sky, this really cool cloud structure. And I pulled over, and you're not supposed to pull over, right, on the highway like that, but I had to get it. I pulled over really quick, grabbed the camera, reached out the window, and I got about 4 or 5 shots, and I took off. It's one-handed. That's the image stabilizer in the system, right? And I'm at like f8, just shoot it. I got the screen out, so I could see the screen that flips out. So that works out really well. But about 3 of the shots, I got the mirror, the side mirror in the shot. But this is one that came out well. So
That's fantastic.
this is the live ND again. So this is Niagara Falls. From the American side, I had a group of shooters. It was a camera club out there that I work with, and I took some guys out, did Olympus presentation, and showed them this. So this is on the tripod using the live neutral density. You can see to the left on the bottom the water part of the falls, and then on the top you have the clouds moving. And I can't remember if this was probably about a 20-second exposure, I want to say, to get that movement. One thing I don't like about the image, and I did change it in the actual final image, is over to the right on the bottom there's a guy standing there looking at his phone. And if you look down in the front, in the middle of the image, you'll see a rail. And there's a whole bunch of people standing at the rail. There's movement there. And they're tiny. But where this guy is standing, the way that he looks giant. It's just the way the angle is. And so I actually removed him from the final image. And it looks a lot better without him standing there.
I bet.
But I thought it was kind of cool. It's a different shot of Niagara Falls. So live neutral density, man, it's amazing. Just to not have the filters and be able to turn it on and off. Justin, this was in Muskegon, framing the image.
Yeah,
so
I
this
remember.
was inside. Yep.
I remember this one.
We got to go inside the Pier Marquette. We got to go inside some of the lighthouses, or one of the lighthouses. And so what I did was I framed with a 7-14. I used the opening, the window, and framed the other lighthouse. And it's just cool to be able to frame something sometimes, whether it's trees or something along these lines. So 7-14, man, get nice and wide. Yeah, and I was right up on this thing, man. So nice and close. Best $5 Rick Kefkin ever spent.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Rick.
I owe Rick on that one, man. He allowed me and my girls to get in there. Wide angle fun, 7-14. This is interesting. I shot this maybe a month ago. No, actually, sorry, I've been in Florida for 2 months. It was 3 months ago.
Before March.
Yeah, before March. I was coming home. This is on Lake Erie. But it's interesting. This little lighthouse, it's actually very small. And there's a building right next to it. So I think for this, you just have to be creative. They actually snagged it off my Instagram. They wanted to show it, one of these Lake Erie, advertising places. But it's getting really close. And with a 7-14, I could throw that scene out there and still get really, really close where I could get rid of that building that was showing on the side. So, should have used neutral density on this and got those clouds moving.
No, I still think it's nice without it. I mean, they're nice leading lines all in themselves.
Yeah, they're kind of neat, right? I think that's what makes the shot is the clouds.
Yeah, and that's what makes a lot of the landscape shots, and that's something that I've seen a lot of your shots is that you've got a lot of good cloud formations, and that is a huge thing when it comes to landscapes. Is if you don't have clouds, or if it's an overcast sky, or it's the gloomy overcast, there just really isn't a lot there, unlike with what you have. By the way, Mr. Kefkin says, "You guys are welcome, Mike."
Rick, I owe you one. I'll get through these, you guys. I know we're running a little late. I'm almost done. I got a couple more, but this one shows the 5-axis, right? This is when we went out on the boat last summer, Justin.
Yeah, and speaking of the boat, we do have
Aquastar.
We did have 4 cruises. We had to cancel the June one, but I think it bumps us back to. I think there was maybe a do-over in October, so I'm not sure. I have to look at the email again, but we do have 3 of these scheduled for the summer, and they're planning on doing it. So we hope that you guys will join us for those.
Yeah, we'll have to kind of play it by ear, see where things go, and hopefully we can get out there and do some stuff. So, but this is showing that 5-axis. I mean, this is handheld on that boat. If I zoomed in, which I can't, you can actually read the words and everything, or the name of the boat. So pretty cool stuff.
Milwaukee Clipper, yeah.
Milwaukee Clipper, really cool boat. This is something different. So this is like I think it was a 2-shot panorama. I believe I was using live comp on the top left one to get some of that movement. This boat's coming along, so I thought I'd take a couple shots and throw them together. but something a little different. A million people up there shooting, you know.
Oh yeah, I love the one with the lights in the top left.
Yeah, it came out really cool.
Oh yeah,
It
that's
was a
really
really
cool.
cool scene. It's neat to be there. This was the handheld high resolution over in Ohio. But again, it was sort of this. Again, the clouds are what I
Hmm.
love, and the idea that there was like just all this stuff outside, you know, just this clutter, just kind of made that shot. I think this is in, I believe this is Manistee,
Yep, Manistee.
Michigan. So I loved how you had a little bit of snow over to the left. But again, 12 to 100. I just love that lens, and I'm at 12 millimeters, and it's just I love the 7 to 14, and this one is probably a close. They're probably head to head. Just love them both for landscape. 7 to 14. Here we go. Right, get low. So I was really low. I actually fell down on my back on this one. So there was moss on the rock. First time I was there, Marblehead Lighthouse in Ohio, and I just slipped and fell. So I got up so nobody would see that I fell, or hope that nobody saw it. And I just kind of got up really slow. My back was killing. Set the tripod up, made it look like I purposely got down on my knees to shoot it. But if you get low, you guys, you can really get some really neat images. It's just a different perspective, right? So again, tripod, or you take your camera, and that's where that screen comes in, where you turn that at a different angle, and you can really get some interesting shots. And that's it for that presentation, Justin. Um,
That's
just wanted to show that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
excellent. Yeah,
I'm
I
back.
appreciate you going through all that and sharing those tips and tricks with us. I mean, everything that you shared is, stuff I would talk about, and it's, and just for everyone who's out there who's not an Olympus shooter, a lot of the lenses that you had showed in that list of lenses to shoot with, you've got the 12 millimeter, which would equal a 24. You've got the 12 to 100, which would be a 24 to 200 equivalent. You
Right.
had the 40 to 150, which is an 80 to 300. You had the
Hmm.
7 to 14, which is a 14 to 24 equivalent. And then I think you had the 12 to 40 on there, which is 24 to 80, and the 12 to 45, which is a 24 to 90.
Yeah, 12 to 45.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I saw that Amanda asked. That was a while ago. We asked her which lens I used. I couldn't see the comments, you guys, when I was actually presenting. I could only see the presentation. So I'm sorry if I
Oh,
missed
oh no, you
anything.
haven't missed any. I've been keeping watch for you.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, good. Yeah, you could see where my 12 to 100 sort of cannibalizes a lot of my shots. And I used to leave the 12 on there a lot.
Hmm.
But man, I love that 12 to 100.
It's a really
You
nice
know,
lens. I mean, I thought I was going to miss not having the 2.8 or the 2.8 either way, either the 12 to 40 or the
yeah.
40 to 150, and I had a choice between one or the other. And then there was like, well, why not do the 12 to 100? And I'm like, okay, just do the 12 to 100. And I actually I love that lens for everything. In fact, I don't really need or want for any other lens. I take that with me, and it forces me to use it to its
Yeah.
fullest extent. I wish it was a little
Yeah.
wider at times when I shoot waterfalls, but if I get back just right, I can use it, and I'm good.
Yeah.
And so it's a
I
great
did
lens.
90% of a wedding with it. I mean, I did a wedding with it mostly. It
Wow.
was crazy at f4.
That's really pushing it, But I've also done
Yeah,
low light concert stuff with it when I do the double exposure stuff,
yeah. It just
and
depends on the setting and what you're doing. You know.
yeah, it's all situational, and that's just a good study in using your lenses. It's, if you've got primes or if you've got variable lenses, I would say,
Yeah.
use them to their fullest extent and really push yourself.
Oh yeah.
If you're in a tricky situation, try to make it work. How can you make, like, if you have a 12 millimeter, how can you make it work? So.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of fun things you can do, you guys. And as far as landscape in general, these are just some tips, and they're just some things for landscape. And really, I'm still learning my landscape. You'll see a lot of my shots that I showed are still elementary. I mean, a lot of them are very, very basic landscape photos. Not a lot of filter stuff. Um, I don't edit a lot, so I don't go crazy with my photos a lot. Most of my photos. There's guys out there that are just unbelievable, right, Justin? So
Oh,
this is
there's
elementary, but it's a
it
start,
takes all
And
kinds. It takes all kinds.
yeah,
And
the biggest advice I can give everybody is just keep practicing. You might get frustrated, but I've gotten better over the last 5 years because I've just been doing it over and over and over, and I have a long way to go. So
It's all
don't
about
get frustrated. Just keep
exercising.
going.
It's all about exercising this muscle right here.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. You're the photographer. So, well, what do you think, Justin?
I think it's time, but there's also for any of our Olympus viewers who have made it this far. In closing, we have a workshop, do we not, coming up next week, Friday, with you, Mike?
29th. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
the
next week?
29th.
Yeah.
At what time?
We're doing, I believe it's 3 o'clock. Am I correct? 3 to 4?
We can double check the time, but you're doing a presentation
Could be 4 to 5.
on
I think it's 3 to 4. I'm doing live composition.
so a presentation on live composition, and will that be live or that'll be something that is that's like a private class, right?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, you guys, is thanks, Rick. By the way, it's good seeing you too. Um, I think what we're going to do is WebEx,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have a little bit of a PowerPoint that shows some things with live comp, and I'll talk through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'll do is actually have a setup where I will do it live. So you'll see it. I'll have a camera set for live comp. Pretty cool.
Okay, so you'll
Light
have
it
it
up.
set up. This is going to be like a virtual coffee with Olympus, is what we have it set up as.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And
when you guys come to the store and I come in and I do a presentation, it's going to be very similar to that, except virtually. And you have to bring your own coffee.
you have to bring your own coffee. But yeah, I think it's a virtual coffee with Olympus. It's going to be 3 to 4 p.m. Next week, Friday on the 29th. So we'll have that information posted on our Facebook page tomorrow, so that
Yep.
you guys can sign up for that. It will be free. So that's something that we'll have that ready to go, and we'll probably see you next week on Wednesday, right, Mike? Because you'll be done with vacation, and we'll get to
Yeah. Yeah,
kind of hang
absolutely.
out
So we'll
again.
figure that out as we go. We'll get something set up.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to you guys then. And we'll send out a password just before the event. So probably the day before. If you sign up on that Eventbrite for the live comp class, we'll send out a little password, and so make sure you're set up for WebEx, and we'll get it going.
Yeah, we
So
got some people who are excited about it. Sandy Bruce is saying sounds great. Bridget Miko is saying looking forward to it, and yeah, we're looking forward to. And we just want to thank you, Mike, for giving us some of your vacation time with us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week Wednesday, and then next week Friday for our live comp workshop.
yeah, sounds good. So I'll see you guys then, and thanks, Justin. I'll see you then.
Anytime, Mike. Hey, thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. Don't forget, we're open for curbside service Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have a special broadcast on WZZM's My West Michigan tomorrow morning, so stay tuned for that. And if you guys have any questions, or if you want, you can contact us at the store, or if you want to see a new subject that we talk about next week on Wednesday, drop that in the comment section below, and Mike and I would be happy to talk about that for you.
Absolutely. All
So,
right. Thanks, you guys. We appreciate your attendance, and
and
we'll see you soon.
yeah, we hope
Thanks.
you have a great evening. Take care, guys.
Take care.